Alright everybody, welcome back! So after a short break from actual patch vehicles, because I mean there's really not that many to cover, we're back here today with my personal favorite, the TIE Fighter. This of course is the F-5E FCU, and this is a Thailand variant of the F-5E. All this is an avionics and weapons update to the F-5E, and they don't actually change anything that would affect its flight performance. So if you've used the F-5E in the US or the Chinese tech tree already, you already know how it flies. If you haven't, well, basically what you can expect is something that has great high-speed energy retention and great overall agility. And in the case of the F-5E, greater acceleration than the F-5C as well, because it does gain better engines. Now, it's not going to be anywhere near F-20 levels of flight performance, because of course the F-20 is just a better F-5E, but it still handles very well, as long as you keep it at those higher speeds at least. And in 12.0 matches, it's not quite as competitive as in the lower battle ratings. You know, of course, you will have to fight stuff like the F-16, for example, which does everything you do but better, and is also faster than you. But so long as they're not focusing you down, which typically doesn't happen in a normal ARB session, you are perfectly capable of going around and catching people off guard. You already want to play the normal F5 like a rat, and this even more so because of the battle rating that you're at. So I mentioned the speed earlier. That is the only thing that I really had qualms with when I was playing this vehicle. There was a lot of cases where I simply could not catch up to people in time, right? Or I would get to the battle much later than everybody else, and so, you know, almost everybody will be dead, because everyone died in the first head-on, and I got there so much later than everything else. The F-5E tops out at about around Mach 1.02 on the deck, which is pretty slow, you know, for this battle rating at least. Honestly, it's slow enough that I don't really think that afterburning on your way in, at least at full throttle, is really worth it, because it doesn't make that much of a difference, you know, to your top speed. So this is one of the few planes where if you wanted to run light on fuel and just go in on, you know, 100%, or maybe use that first stage burner, I might actually recommend it. The one disadvantage to the F5 series is that they have very low thrust at lower speeds. As you can see right here, the thrust at higher speed is pretty high, and the thrust to weight goes up dramatically at those speeds, but once it drops below a certain threshold, it is going to have a pretty hard time gaining it back and also just being competitive in a dogfight. And I just got jumped by a Vigan, because I wasn't paying attention, at less than 700 kilometers an hour of airspeed, and I am not going to be able to shake this guy, just to give you all a heads up. I'm trying to pop my landing flaps out, I'm trying to air brake as well periodically here, and he is just able to hang with me with no issues. This is the one downside of the F5 series, is that at these lower speeds, it does have a bit of a hard time. You know, even stuff like the MiG-21s can give you a run for your money at this speed, just because they have a much higher thrust to weight ratio than you do. And I'm going to be stuck in this dogfight for another minute or so before eventually getting third-partied. You can see I'm dropping throttle, I'm air braking, I'm using landing flaps, and I just cannot get him to overshoot. This typically doesn't happen, and if I was paying attention, I would have noticed him coming earlier, so this shouldn't usually be an issue, but it is just something to consider. So I mentioned earlier that the big upgrade for this thing are the weapons, and you do get a very substantial upgrade in your kit. So the normal F-5E, which should be 11.0 by the way, only gets access to 2 AIM-9Js or 2 AIM-9Ps, depending on what tree you're using. The FCU, on the other hand, gets access to 2 AIM-9P4s on the wingtips, and these are all aspect versions of the AIM-9P, plus an additional 2 Python 3s strapped under the wings, and I am a massive fan of the Python 3. Having an F-5E with these is just absolutely incredible. So both the AIM-9P4 and the Python 3 are going to have identical flare resistance. They both have the same range bands as the AIM-9L, they have the same FOV as well. The AIM-9P4 is actually basically just an AIM-9P that has an AIM-9L seeker head as well. So because you only get access to 4 air-to-air missiles, and because you are so much slower than everyone else, I would be very selective when it comes to which missiles you are using in what situation. If you wind up at, like, you know, 1.5 kilometers behind somebody, and they're not really going hard evasive, I would recommend switching to your AIM-9Ps and trying to use those first instead. Because you're going to need that extended range for the Python when you're trying to chase down something like, you know, an F-14 or an F-16 that's extending away from you. Whenever you do get into a dogfight, the guns are acceptable. You get the M39s, of course. You should already be familiar with these, and these are pretty good. I'm not as big of a fan of them as I used to be after the ballistic changes. They just feel kind of weird. They don't have a lot of mass, for the rounds, and so it feels like they slow down a little bit weird. So at closer ranges, they're very easy to aim, but once they get past around 600-ish meters, it starts to feel just a little bit weird to aim. When they do connect, though, they do pretty reliable damage, so you shouldn't have to worry there at least. One of the things that this brings for Japan specifically is the fact that they now have a vehicle that's lower than 12.0 that has guided munitions. This, of course, gets the same as the F-5E. It gets 4 AGM-65Bs, and of course the AIM-9s and the wingtips. And this is kind of a big deal for Japan because previously the F-16AJ was the only thing that had Mavericks. Now the only problem is that this doesn't actually have a lineup to work with. Gaijin put this at 11.3 and the Type 90s are 11.0. So if you want to bring out the F-5E, you have to up to your Type 90s. Only by 0.3, but it's just something to consider. If you want to lose that favorable matchmaking that you get at 11.0 where you get down to in the 10.0 constantly. Personally, I wouldn't recommend it, but that's just me. Last but not least, if you don't actually know how to get one of these, this is a squadron vehicle. Whenever you join a squadron, it'll ask you to choose what vehicle you want to allocate your points for. And I want to say it's 3 days, you will get your squadron RP points. And that depends both on your activity and the activity of your squadron as a whole. So if you're in a very small squadron, you will not get a lot of points. And if you aren't actually being active yourself, earning enough RP, you also won't get many points. So both you and your squadron have to be active, and then you get a maximum of 20k RP. It's going to take a while to get this thing. Honestly, if you want it quickly, I would just go ahead and Golden Eagle it, because it'll take you a bit. If you don't mind waiting, though, you can, of course, grind this thing without any Golden Eagles and just buy it for Silver Lions once it's up. It'll take you about a couple months to go ahead and finish it up. This is probably the best squadron vehicle they've done in a very long time, and it also means that Japan is confirmed pretty much to get their Thai Subtree. And Thailand is going to give a lot of variety to Japan that they didn't have previously. It'll mostly be copy and paste, of course, but I mean, hey, pretty much every nation they're going to be adding from now on is going to be copy and paste. Funnily enough, this means Japan will probably get a Gripen in the future, and ground-wise, they may actually be the first nation to get the T-84 Oplots, because Thailand does use that, and that would be hilarious. By the way, if you did enjoy the video, I'd appreciate it if you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'm shooting for 20k, and the majority of y'all are not subscribed. 70% of you, in fact. But with the usual drivel out of the way, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know in the comments down below. Are you as excited about this thing as I was? Because this was the highlight of the patch for me. In any case, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch y'all next time. So, peace, y'all.